Hello, I'm James from Borussia Dortmund English, and this is the Echte Liebe Podcast. Firstly, I'd like to start by welcoming you all and also say how excited I am at being able to bring you the very first episode. I plan to use this podcast and platform to talk about all things BVB, whether that be the upcoming games, results, transfer rumours, or just the latest news. Yet, with that being said, I wanted to start the podcast series just a little differently. This episode is going to be about the fan base, it's going to be about the core of the club and what makes being a BVB fan so special, and why is it different to any other club. I want to cover how and why the fan base is so broad, why it's grown to the stature that it has, and how is it that we have black and yellow fans from every corner of the globe. For me, my story is a very vivid one, and one that I'll never forget. Being from Nottingham in England, I am very much aware of the European Cup. It was the famous Brian Clough Nottingham Forest that conquered all before them. Not just once, but twice, and even more impressively, it was back to back. But, unfortunately for me, this was in the late 70s, which was a good 10 years before I was born. So, by the time I hit my early teenage years, they had very much fallen from grace and found themselves playing in the Old English First Division. As a result, midweek football was very hard to come by, especially when they seemed to exit every cup competition in the early rounds. My hunger to see any level of football meant I regularly found myself tuning into the Champions League. It doesn't need saying that, even if your team never reaches the pinnacle of European football, it's still the greatest club competition in the world. So when you can, you take any and every chance to watch some of the best teams and players on the planet. On one such night, I decided to do just that. Arsene Wenger's Arsenal were playing a team I didn't really know too much about. You guessed it, Borussia Dortmund. Now this was an Arsenal team with the likes of David Seaman, Ashley Cole, and the amazing midfield containing Patrick Vieira and Robert Pires. But most notably, there was also a certain Thierry Henry. This was in the 2002 to 2003 season, and to think this side went on to be the Invincibles the very next season showed just the abundance of quality that they possessed. But that didn't matter, not to the current German champions or to the packed Westfalenstadion. I think the best way to start describing it is with the stadium and crowd. I'd never seen anything like it, and I still haven't seen anything come close, even now. It was just a sea of yellow everywhere you looked. Tens of thousands of Borussen singing, cheering, choreographing and willing their team on. It will be something I never forget. As for a comparison, the Arsenal team they were playing against played their home games in front of just over 30,000 people. And they weren't even close in terms of passion and noise of the black and yellow. I remember parts of the game really well. I think that it was Thierry Henry that scored reasonably early on, and at the time I thought that that would be it, that the crowd would be silenced and that Arsenal would go on to get a second and maybe a third, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Not only did the noise and support from the stands grow, but so did the belief from the players on the pitch. I just remember this giant of a man up front, and behind him a playmaker that single-handedly ran the game. Of course, I'm talking about the Czech duo of Jan Koller and Tomáš Rosický. The latter scored both of Dortmund's goals as they came from behind to win the game 2-1. It was the first time that I'd seen BVB legends such as Captain Lars Ricken, Sebastian Kehl, Dede and Eva Nilsson. Little did I know the affinity that the players and fans had with each other, an affinity that was tested in the years to come. The club struggled heavily away from the field, which for many was hard to believe. The financial crisis came to a head in the 2003 to 2004 season, and by 2005 they were close to being no more. Luckily for us all, by the very skin of their teeth the club managed to survive, and as they say, the rest is history. From that point on, it's been running away so that a balance between success and sustainability is upheld. At times it can be frustrating, seeing some of the world's best talents use the club as a springboard to what they feel is a bigger step in their career, yet rarely do they ever feel the connection and emotion that they have whilst wearing the black and yellow. We know this due to the continual return of many former players. Even just in recent years, the likes of Mario Götze, Mats Hummels, Nuri Sahin, and yes, even captain Marco Reus, although he did choose a different route from the rest. It is just another indicator as to how special this club is to those that have experienced it. But that puts us in a contradicting position as fans. Young players want to come here. They crave being given that chance in front of the yellow wall, but they also know that their stay will most probably be a fleeting one. On the one hand, we have the benefit of the very best playing here, but then shortly after we have to cut ties and move on to the next rising star. This is what bonds us as fans. We have the constant worry and heartache that our idols will soon be turning their back on a club that has given them everything, and a fan base that has given them all the support that they need. But in the end, we have to remember that football is a business. I will always be grateful that I tuned into that game over 20 years ago. It was a decision that shaped my life and has brought me so many emotions over the years, but most importantly, it's brought me an escape and a happiness that only this club could provide. So now it's your turn. That's right, I want to hear how you became a BVB fan, supporter, or even a fanatic if that's what you call yourself. What is the highlight since you've been a Borussen? And what has been the lowest point? Where in the world do you follow from? I want to know it all. This was the main reason that I wanted to bring this podcast to the Borussia Dortmund English platform. I want to increase interaction and make it a place where we can all share our stories and enjoy the successes, and also be there for each other through the hard times. If you want to share your story, then put it in the comment section of this YouTube video. If you want to be able to interact further, I've also set up a Patreon page to which I will post the link on the description. By becoming a Borussia Dortmund English member, you will gain early access to these podcasts before they are posted to the public. You will also be able to put forward questions to myself that I can do my very best to talk about and answer in the upcoming shows. I've set this at the lowest tier of just £1 per month, so if that is something that you would be interested in, then I'd like to thank you in advance for your support. So, that's the very first show completed, and a huge thank you goes to everyone that is involved on the pages because you are the motivation that helps me want to keep putting this content out there and being a part of this unique and special fan base. I'll see you all on the pages over the next week, and stay tuned for the next podcast upload. With Leipzig on Friday and then Chelsea in midweek after, it's certainly going to be an interesting week, and we should have plenty to talk about. Thank you for tuning in to the very first episode. My name is James from Borussia Dortmund English, and this has been the Echte Liebe Podcast.